Hello, today is Friday, October 16th, and it's chapter 16 that we're looking at, but I need to back you up to get you prepared to know what's going on. If you haven't read, I didn't include in in yesterday's message about the tail end, which it probably should be in a different chapter because it's about Paul and Barnabas, but and then the whole rest of it follows Paul. So at the very end of chapter 15, there is a paragraph about a separation that occurs between Paul and Barnabas. Paul and Barnabas decide that they're going to do what they've done before, whereas revisit all the places that they visited and encourage the churches there. Iconium, Lystra, Derby, those different places that they'd already been to, got kicked out of, but they have established churches there, so they're going to go back and revisit them. And they get into an argument, and the argument's around the inclusion of John Mark in the mission. So Barnabas wants to bring John, also called Mark, on the mission with them. And Paul says no, he abandoned us in Pamphylia. I think it's called Pamphylia. He abandoned us, and so we're not gonna have him go with us. And so they got into such an argument about it that he decided to separate. And so Barnabas takes John Mark with him, and then Paul chooses Silas, who was also you remember him from chapter 15. Silas is introduced. He and Judas, also called Barsabbas, are elected to go with them with that letter that James dictated to the Gentile believers to affirm them from the council, Jerusalem council. So Silas is chosen for that. I don't know what happened to Judas. He was partners with Silas and now he's not. So Paul chooses Silas, Barnabas and John Mark go their separate ways. They're still on the same boat though. They're still on the same page about what they're preaching about. They just didn't agree about who should go on the mission because Paul had a problem with John Mark abandoning them in Pamphylia. Anyway, one of the places. So Paul meets Timothy in this next place. So Paul goes to Derby and to Lystra. He visits those two places. Or Derb, I don't know, if you now pronounce the B or not. And he met Timothy, who was the son of a Jew and a Greek. So that was not a common marriage, but that's who he was. So Timothy would have his father was Greek, so he'd have a Greek name, and his mother was Jewish. And so Paul wants to bring Timothy with him, and so requires that he be circumcised. Now, I don't understand why the relaxed regulations that were just dictated back in chapter 15 do not apply to Timothy. It says here, because of the Jews who were in those places, for they all knew his father was a Greek. So they had him circumcised because they knew that he was a Greek, and they felt like it gives him a little more legitimacy, I suppose. That would be the thing. And so Timothy becomes part of them with Silas, and the account goes on to describe what happened, where they go, and again you see them traveling to different places, and the Holy Spirit's dictating to them what they should do. Don't go here. Go here, but don't talk. And then Paul has a dream, and the man in the dream told him to come to Macedonia and help us. And they immediately got up and crossed over to Macedonia. And I will let you look now on a little bit of video from my map in my Bible. Okay, I need to show you this trip that they made. So these are the towns we've been talking about. And the trip that they make is they get in the boat at Troas, See, that's right here. And they go to, so this is water here. This is Troas. Let me get over top of it. Then they go to Samothrace, maybe? Samothrace. Stop there, I guess. They refuel. Just kidding. And then they go to Neapolis, which is this point right here, Neapolis, and then on to Philippi, which is the great city. And then, of course, we have the letter that Paul wrote to the beloved Philippians. So that is a little piece of the map of what we were looking at. Okay, so in Philippi, they meet a woman named Lydia, who is from, it starts with Thyatira, I think. And she's a dealer in purple cloth, which I understand in the commentary that she was a wealthy woman. And she had a gathering of women where they came across her and were talking to her, and she was converted and baptized along with her whole household and invited Paul and Silas to stay with her, which is a beautiful thing. It's just very nice. She's hospitable. So Paul and Silas are there, and one day they were praying, and a slave girl starts following them around, and she is a predictor of things, or like a seer. And the way my Bible describes her is that she has the spirit of divination. So maybe there's like a special demon in her that helps her to see different things. And so what was going on with her was her slave owners were using her to make money, to like predict things and tell people their future and stuff like that. And so she starts following Paul and Silas and yelling about them being servants of the Most High God, really giving them props, affirmation. I know exactly who they're. The only person that identified Jesus in Mark's gospel was the centurion at the very end of the crucifixion. But all the demons knew exactly who Jesus was. So, what have you to do with me, Son of the Most High God? So she's proclaiming all this, and Paul just gets annoyed with her and exorcises the demon, like just, psh, and then she's saved and she's whole. And however, her owners come after them and have them arrested because they can't make money off of her anymore because she's now normal. Thank you, Paul. But they throw Paul and Silas in jail, and that the whole reason why they throw Paul and Silas in jail is not as important as what happens in jail. And Luke is very particular about this. So, like, something I forgot to tell you was after Paul had that dream, Luke moves to first person. Luke moves to first person plural. So we go from watching a documentary to a scripted drama. We just kind of like, we're out here looking in, and then all of a sudden we're inside of the story because it literally, he has the dream. When they had come opposite, blah, blah, blah. They attempted to go into blah, blah, blah. And then the Spirit of Jesus did not allow them. So passing Mysia, they went down to Troas. During the night, Paul had a vision. There stood a man of Macedonia, pleading with him and saying, "Come to Macedonia." When he had seen the vision, we just moved there. We immediately tried to cross over to Macedonia. I mean, so we make this move in chapter 16 to first person plural. We're doing this and we're going here. So one day we were going to the place of prayer and this slave girl comes up, and then we were doing this. And then, so it goes back though to the documentary and tells you, and the narrative's voice comes in again. So Paul and Silas are praying and singing after they've been publicly beaten. After they're arrested, then publicly beaten, and then they go back to the jail, and they're locked in the inner jail. A lot of details about how they got locked in and everything. They're locked into the inner jail, and they are singing and praying in the jail. Now at midnight, not 11:45, not 9:30, at midnight, it says, there's a terrible earthquake. But it's a wonderful earthquake because it opens all the chains and the doors all fall open and everything is going, all the prisoners can go free. Then the jailer sees what's happened and he gets ready to take his own life. And Paul stops him and says, stop, or something. And he says, don't take your own, do not harm yourself because we are all here. So the jailer calls for the lights to come on, and because that was a bigger issue back then before electricity. So he calls for the lights to come on, and he sees that everyone's in their place. And he's like, what must I do to be saved? So he really is, he's been listening to these singing, he's kind of getting on the track, and then this thing happens, this miracle, this earthquake, and then all the prisoners stay. And it's a grace to him. This activity is a grace to him. It's a miracle, and it's a grace to him. And so to repay it, he gets to be a part of the way, invites Paul and Silas again to Paul and Silas. I keep saying Cyrus. Paul and Silas again to his house, and they are with him and stay with him. And the next morning they go back to the jail, and the magistrate says, "Please let them go." And then there's a little thing here that I think relates to us now with people being detained unlawfully in our country. So that's what happens to them. They're detained unlawfully, and they say, "Oh, just let them go. Just sneak them out the back door." And Paul says, "No, no, no. You beat us publicly, and we were uncondemned. So you need to come publicly and take us out of the jail. Make sure that everyone knows that we're being, that we're not being punished anymore. That we are okay. That we're not going to have this disgrace upon our heads." So they did that, and they apologized, knowing that they're Roman citizens. That kind of shook their boots a little bit. But then they took their leave of the city. They said they asked them to leave the city, so they left the city. And that's the thing. It keeps spreading because these towns keep rejecting them. Like the towns, and they'll come in and they'll get some believers. They got Lydia, they got the jailer, and then they'll have to leave. But it spreads that way. So it keeps spreading. This is a great story. Getting out of jail and then staying put to help the jailer. Did not take his own life. So I hope that you will be encouraged by Paul and Silas today. God bless.